Good evening to you, you. Good evening, good evening to you, you. Good evening, good evening. Won't you share with a friend or two? Good evening to you, you. Good evening to you. Welcome to Daring Dialogues. I'm your host tonight, Shantae Charles. I hope that you have been having a great and wonderful day. Tonight we have something special that we're going to be doing along with our reading about women, women in history, both present and past. Tonight we are bringing on a special guest, and she is going to be on the second half of our program tonight, and she's going to be reading from her work, Black, White, and Red All Over, author Deanne Matthews. So we look forward to having her on in the second half of our program tonight. And so tonight we're going to get started with our women icons as we do our read aloud. Tonight we are reading from The Fierce 44, Black Americans Who Shook Up the World, and A Black Woman Did That, 43 Boundary Breaking, Bar Raising, World Changing Women. So we're going to start out tonight with the Fierce 44 book. And we have one young lady that we're going to read from this book. She's also in the other book as well in more detail. But this is Shirley Chisholm. Because before Yes We Can, there was unbought and unbossed. Shirley Chisholm. Shirley Chisholm is a politician who lived from 1924 to 2005. Before President Barack Obama's Yes We Can slogan, there was Shirley Chisholm's motto, unbought and unbossed. In 1972, 36 years before Obama was elected the first black president, Chisholm was the first black candidate for a major party's nomination for president. That campaign made her a pathbreaker for women too. She was the first woman to run for Democratic Party's presidential nomination, 44 years before Hillary Clinton became the first woman to win a major party's nomination for president. Being the first wasn't anything new for Chisholm. In 1968, she became the first black woman elected to Congress, representing New York for 7 terms from 1969 to 1983. As both a New York state legislator and a congresswoman, Chisholm fought for the federal government to help people get an education and to help poor people get enough food to eat. Chisholm noted that she faced more discrimination because of gender than race during her legislative career, while acknowledging the additional struggle that black women encounter because of their color. Kimberly Crenshaw coined this term intersectionality, meaning that there are certain discriminations that black women face that either black men don't face or either women don't face, but when black women face them, it's called intersectionality. Every person Chisholm hired for her congressional office was a woman, and half of them were black. Chisholm wanted women, African Americans, and the poor to get a seat at the table. And if there wasn't an empty chair, she advised bringing your own. Shirley Chisholm. All right, from our next book tonight, we have 2 young women that we're going to be reading. And then I will bring you on if you want an opportunity to discuss the reading. And then at 6:30, we will transition to our special author guest. So tonight we're going to look at Faith Ringgold. In case you don't know who Faith Ringgold is, we know that she is a visual artist, but let's find out a lot more about her upbringing. This is a visual illustration of Faith Ringgold in her environment. As a child, Faith Ringgold was often kept home from school because of her asthma. She passed the time alone by making art. Once she felt better and was back in the company of other children, she still spent time being creative and making beautiful things. I was constantly doing art, but I didn't think of myself as an artist. It was just something I liked to do, she said. Faith might have gotten her artsy side from her mother, a fashion designer, who encouraged her daughter to exercise her creativity. Faith also found inspiration in the place where they lived, Harlem, a historic area in New York City known for its African American arts community. Before and during Faith's life, it was the home of composer Duke Ellington, painters Jacob Lawrence and Aaron Douglas, and writer Langston Hughes. Faith grew up near the City College of New York. She often watched students walk back and forth from campus, but what she didn't notice until she applied to the school herself was that the students were all white and male. Supported by taxpayer dollars, the school was an option for any student who could not afford tuition at a private university. She enrolled but was originally told that she could not major in art because women did not receive liberal arts degrees, she was told. Eventually, the school decided that as long as she also studied education, she could study art. In 1950, the same year she started at City College, she married musician Robert Earl Wallace. The pair had two daughters, Michelle Faith and Barbara Faith. Faith took as many art classes as she could and received a bachelor's degree in fine art and education in 1955. Her job teaching in art public Her job teaching art in public schools helped her pay for her graduate studies in art. She graduated and included her family in her artistic adventures. When she traveled by ocean liner to look at art in the museum and galleries of Europe in the 1960s, she brought her mother and daughters along. She knew her mother would enjoy the experience and her children would learn and make memories to carry with them for the rest of their lives. Few Americans, especially Black women traveling with their family, had the opportunity to travel abroad. Seeing great works of art in person and experiencing French culture opened her eyes to new possibilities for herself. Early in her career, Faith painted beautiful landscapes, but a gallery owner who was impressed with her talent made her think twice about her flowery subjects. After their meeting, Faith began to look around at what was happening in society as inspiration for her work. There was a lot of political tension in America and around the world in the 60s, and she decided that she wanted to reflect it in her art. In the late 1960s, Faith did a collection of paintings called American People. They were up-close portraits of men and women from all walks of life. When the National Museum of Women in the Arts held an exhibit of 49 canvases in 2013, they described them as bold, provocative paintings in direct response to the civil rights and feminist movements. She even showed scenes of riots or portraits of people covered by a bleeding flag. I wanted to create art that made people stop and look. Faith was a storyteller at heart, and she wrote her family life into stories she created about real people, including historical figures such as Frederick Douglass. She wrote scripts for live performances and made paintings, some on pieces of fabric stitched together to make the image whole. She also created soft sculptures, masks, and dolls depicting influential people such as President Jimmy Carter and his family. In the early 1980s, she began to make story quilts using both text and bold images. These quilts showed the suffering and joy and the losses and victories of Black people, and they became her most popular type of work. Her first story quilt, Who's Afraid of Aunt Jemima, uses words and images to break down the stereotype of Black women as maids who only have worth when they are laboring for others. Faith wanted to provoke her audience. She said, "You've got to get 'em and hold 'em. The more they look, the more they see." In the late 1990s, she depicted the Statue of Liberty as a Black woman and created a scene of historical figures, Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, and Sojourner Truth, together in conversation. In sharing her vision of the world, Faith not only became a world-class artist, but also a feminist icon and a leading voice for Black people in America. Her work has been shown in museums and galleries around the world, and she has received many grants, fellowships, and prestigious awards, including 23 honorary doctorates. Her public commissions, like those of Zenobia Bailey, who followed her, include mosaic murals in subway stations. In the Civic Center and Grand Park subway station in Los Angeles, her People Portraits installation includes 52 glass mosaics. The mosaic she designed for New York City's 125th Street subway station, called Flying Home, Harlem Heroes and Heroines, features images of Black artists, athletes, and leaders like Josephine Baker, Zora Neale Hurston, Jesse Owens, Sugar Ray Robinson, and Malcolm X. Faith created artwork to express her feelings about people's inhumanity to one another, exploring subjects from American slavery to the bombing of the World Trade Center on September 11, 2001. Out of every awful thing is something beautiful, she has said. As an artist, I want to see beauty. I can't tell your story, I can only tell mine. I can't be you, I can only be me. Faith Ringgold is just as famous as a children's book author and illustrator. Published in 1991, her first book, Tar Beach, was a Caldecott Honor Book and the winner of the Coretta Scott King Award for Illustration, among other awards. It is set on the tar rooftops of buildings where families such as her went to cool off in the summer. Families and friends came together on roofs to play cards, share meals, and look at the stars. In the book, Faith wrote, "Sleeping on Tar Beach was magical. Lying on the roof in the night with the stars and skyscraper buildings all around me made me feel rich, like I owned all I could see." Faith Ringgold. And now we're going to look at poet Gwendolyn Brooks. Poetry is life distilled, according to Gwendolyn Brooks. It certainly defined hers. Born in Topeka, Kansas in 1917 and raised in Chicago, she began writing in her youth. She published her first poem in a journal called American Childhood at age 13. Young Gwendolyn was encouraged to create by her mom, a teacher and a classically trained pianist, and her father, who supported the family as a janitor. Her mom, Kezia, made a point of taking her to see the great writers of the day, such as Langston Hughes and James Weldon Johnson, when they were in town. At these events, Kezia insisted that 16-year-old Gwen introduce herself to the writers and show her work. Hughes told her she had talent. He said that if she kept writing, she'd be published one day. Sure enough, by the time she was 17, her work regularly appeared in the Chicago Defender, a newspaper respected by African Americans across the country. Her first collection of poetry, A Street in Bronzeville, was published in 1945. In it, Gwendolyn portrayed Black people in urban settings, often living in kitchenette buildings, tight spaces where cooking, living, and sleeping were done in one room. Her poems featured characters based on people from her own life, such as nightclub singers living lonely lives and old marrieds who were worn out by their impoverished and crowded city lives. Gwendolyn wrote about real hardship, but she weaved humor and joyfulness through her work as well. In her writing, she brings readers into the intimate spaces of Black neighborhoods, into the beauty parlors and barbershops where hair is dressed for success, into homes where families shared meals and laughter, and out onto the stoops where workers could express how they really felt about their bosses. Her poems were life distilled. Gwendolyn's poetry touched readers from all walks of life, making her one of America's most beloved and popular writers. She was among the most important voices of the Black arts movement of the 60s and 70s for her honest and loving portrayal of Black America. As Gwendolyn once explained it, "I wrote about what I saw and heard in the street. I lived in a small second-floor apartment at the corner, and I could look first on one side and then on the other. There was my material." People who don't know much about her otherwise know her widely published poem, We Real Cool, from the Bean Eaters, which includes We Real Cool, We Left School, We Lurked Late. She met young people over the years who knew and recited the rhythmic poem, which is both candid about the harsh realities of life in Black community and filled with a spirit that suggests hope and redemption. Gwendolyn published more than 20 books over the course of her career. Though she worked with some mainstream publishers and Black-owned presses, her final publishing home was Third World Press, an independent organization founded by Haki Madhubuti, an activist and poet who who regards her as a mentor. Her greatest lesson to us all, Hockey once wrote, is that serving one's community as an artist means much more than just creating art. Gwendolyn received a multitude of awards, tributes, and accolades over the course of her life, but her highest honor came when she was just 32 years old. In 1950, she won the Pulitzer Prize for Poetry. She received the award for Annie Allen, a collection that revealed the inner life of a young black girl navigating a world that was often hostile to who she was. She was the first black writer to win a Pulitzer Prize. Gwendolyn Brooks. She has published only one novel called Maud Martha. In it, she portrays a brown-skinned girl growing from adolescence to womanhood, slighted by racially prejudiced white people and color-struck black people who believed that light skin was a ticket to a better life. All right, so we've got some time to chop it up about those particular people tonight: Shirley Chisholm, Gwendolyn Brooks, and Faith Ringgold. If you want to come on and join me for some conversation, I have left time for us to do that tonight. So if you'd like to join and give your opinion and your insight into and what you learned from those three women, feel free to click the camera and I will bring you on for discussion. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you guys?
I am doing great. Today has been an interesting day, but I made it through.
That's what counts.
I made it through. I'm glad to be here, glad to be alive, and glad to still have joy.
Yes. Now, I'm going to do Shirley Chisholm
Okay.
because I was around then. I remember when she ran for president.
Mm-hmm.
And many people said she was crazy and all this stuff, but this is the thing that people don't get. Her being the first African American woman,
Mm-hmm.
that opened doors for later on.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, that's what we got to get out of. We got to get out of this microwave thing that's right about right now,
Mm-hmm.
and do things that's going to impact the future.
Mm-hmm.
See, so that, we want it right now, but what about the planning? What about the strategic positioning?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And all those things. Now, this is what she did, and this is what Jesse Jackson did.
Mm-hmm.
See, but we're not talking about Jesse right now. We're talking about the women. But see, this is what she did. Did she really believe she was going to win? I don't think so. I think the main thing she did it for was to open a door.
Right. And I actually recall watching some footage of her probably last year, and she was actually saying just that she wanted to open the door. She wanted to open the way and let people know what the possibility was there. And by her even running, it opened people's mind to the possibility of seeing someone that looked like her running for office and, running for her party's nomination.
Right. So, and that's one of the things that I saw in her, but like I said, we tend to look at, okay, what are you doing now?
Mm-hmm.
Versus looking at as I told somebody today, I'm not concerned about the waves on top of the ocean. I want to know what's underneath those waves.
Yeah.
So the waves can look all nice and pretty and calm, and there's things going on deadly underneath it.
Yeah.
You know, I did a message one time about the different types of, you know, at a beach, there are different types of things going on. You got the person in a nice looking bathing suit just strutting along the sand and everything. Everybody sees them. They're all beautiful and pretty. Then you got the snorkeler that goes under. His snorkel is above the water. He can go down there, you know, keep his head in the water as long as, you know, for a good bit. Then you got the scuba diver. That's got the tank. He can go under. He can go further. He can actually go under the water because he has a tank on, but his supply is limited. So he has to come back up. Then you got the deep sea diver. The guy that goes down, he got his connection. He's still connected. And I use that as an example, still connected to God. Your oxygen, your supply is being pumped down to you. Your sustaining power is being pumped down to you. And you can move some stuff. You can move some stuff in the spirit realm, you know, if you're a deep sea diver. Because you don't have to go in and your time is limited because your faith is limited and you come back out. But a deep sea diver, they move stuff. See, they find stuff. They bring stuff back up. See, bring it back to reality, to life.
They excavate.
Yeah, they excavate. Thank you. They excavate. They salvage.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is what they do. They do stuff. See, and this was Shirley Chisholm. See, people were looking at the surface. Oh, a black woman running for president. But you wasn't looking back down the road to 2008.
Yeah.
See, when President Obama became president, she opened that door.
Yeah, and you have to think about, because when she ran, that was in the 70s, right?
Yep.
So you're talking about maybe I'm just saying, like, really thinking about it, maybe 7 to 10 years into the first generation to have all of their rights as citizens. That's huge.
Yeah.
Like today, we kind of think like, oh, okay, it's normal to see women leading in some capacity. But back then, that was groundbreaking.
Yeah.
That was groundbreaking.
An African-American woman, a black woman running for the highest office in the United States.
Yeah. And of course, I know a lot of people said to her, it's too soon. Because we just got the opportunity to be drinking out the same water fountain. Like, if we think about in terms of the mindset,
right?
You still had black people afraid to go drink out of the same water fountain, even though they had been given that right. You still had black people who were afraid to go register to vote because
and to look a white man in the eye.
Right, because not too many years before that, not even a decade before that, I'm thinking, you had the Mississippi burning case. So, yeah, that was groundbreaking for her to even push forward like that. Because I'm quite sure she had death threats and everything else.
You know she did.
Yeah.
You know she did, but she pushed through it. She pushed through it until she was out. But her mission had already been accomplished.
Yeah.
And so, you know, like the Tuskegee Airmen, right? I'm going to go here follow me. I'm going to go here for a second. When they flew their first mission, it wasn't their mission. They were just out on exercise. The people whose mission it was, some of them chickened out and left the bomber.
Yep.
And they heard this SOS and let's go join this. And it turned out that all of a sudden, all these white bombers were the Tuskegee Airmen, the black men, to escort them because they never lost one.
Yep.
Now, if they had not engaged at that point, would there really be black pilots now? Maybe, but would there have been black pilots, or would black pilots have gotten notification? It's early.
Mm-hmm.
But because of them, at that point, saw the opportunity and seized it, they opened doors. Well, actually, they bust doors down.
And it could have been, and again, to me, it's like you have two types of black people. You have the black people who will say, I'm just here to do a job, or this is what they told us to do. Let's not rock the boat.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is what we've been assigned to do. Let's not rock the boat. And then there are black people who, like you said, they see an opening. They see an opportunity beyond the limitations that they've been given. Because I'm quite sure even though they were in that company, they weren't expected to really engage the fight.
Right.
It's kind of like, okay, we let y'all in.
Mm-hmm.
We let y'all train.
Be satisfied.
But yeah, be satisfied with that. Be satisfied that you're in and you're training and we got you cooking in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
Or using you for some other purpose other than the one you sign up for. But then there are the black people that say, you know what? This is what I signed up for. Here's an opening. Here's an opportunity to show what I can do. Let me go do it. And I'm quite sure those who are listening tonight have probably been around both kinds of black people. I know I have. The ones who are just like, I'm just here for a paycheck. I'm not really trying to shift anything, move anything. I'm just here to do the bare minimum. And we find that in all cultures. It's not just a black thing. I'm here just to do the bare minimum. This is what they said they want us to do. And as long as they give me my pay or whatever, I'm good. I'm not here to make history. I'm just here to get a paycheck.
And you know what? You even find that in ministry.
Mm-hmm. I can agree with that.
Sad to say. But, and I'm going to say this. Our friend Matlock, I love him. Because he rocks them both. He getting blowback from his people. Especially the white folks and Christian folk.
Yeah, they put him in Facebook jail.
Yeah.
I said now I said when you start caping for black people too hard, they gonna put you on lockdown like they do us.
Yeah. But hey, he don't back down. See, so it's like, no, I'm not satisfied with what's going on. See, I'm gonna upset some people. I'm gonna agitate some people because I gotta do what's right. See, he's not settling for, oh man, hey, I got a little space. As long as I please my people, I'm good. That's what I'm going for.
Yeah.
No, he's not doing that. He's like, listen, I'm gonna upset y'all. Y'all can love it or whatever you want to do, but I'm going to speak on truth. I'm going to teach on truth, on what I know, and y'all can make me change that. See, love it. Love it. See, so that's when it's really in the fire, really fight. So I appreciate that, man, and we need more. I know we got quite a few like that. We need more.
Yeah, we definitely don't have enough. We're not nearly at the place where we need to be when it comes to American voices speaking out against what's happening with black people in this country. I look at how much compassion and passion that's being placed on what's happening in the Ukraine. And I have black friends in the Ukraine that I'm now actually helping to leave. So I get it, that there's more than just white people in the Ukraine, but that seems to be what the press, right, and the media is focusing on. And it's almost like you're spending a lot of time focusing on that, but I don't see you have the same kind of passion and wanting to get the news out there about the same conditions that have been going on here with Black people in our own government. So I saw, and I put in my stories the other day, I saw an article that came out. I think it was from a major news source. And good evening, Lady Mathews. We're going to have you on in just a second. And I saw the press talk about how the war zone is affecting the children there. And I'm like, but there's war zones in America happening every day that our government has created. We've created those same conditions of war zones in communities through ghettos. And they're not worried about the psychological and mental impact that it's having on Black children. There's no mainstream news article on that. And so we just gotta evaluate those things. So final thoughts, Pastor Ben, before we have our guest on for tonight.
Y'all got me stuck on women, man. But our women, man, yeah, I give it hats off to y'all. And I always support women in my life 100%. Cause y'all do some stuff, man, that either men don't want to do, don't have time to do, or don't have the talent or gift to do.
I hear you. I hear you on that.
So, y'all listen to me. I know you do on here listen to me, but those who's coming later, you listen to me. We need to support our women. We need to support them. They are the backbone of the family. Many people don't believe that, but it's the woman. As I said, I'm going to say this and I'm going to end. As I said, when I hear a man with that macho attitude, that controlling attitude, I'm the head of this house, well, she's the neck that connects it to the body. I wear the pants right up, but she's the belt that hold your pants up.
Yeah, we may have to get into that on Monday. I might bring up a post on Monday that I read last night, and it asked the question, Black men who are 30, why aren't you getting married, and are you concerned with having children? And the responses on that post just let me know that there are a lot of Black men who are not doing their research. And I was like, these answers are surprising. These answers, the answers were very disrespectful to Black women. The answers were very narcissistic. The answers were showing a lack of understanding about how a population or how a ethnic group continues. There was a lot of ignorance in the comments from men in their 30s and 40s. And I'm like, yeah, give that another 5 to 10 years and you're going to be like, would somebody please marry me? But yeah, so we might have to have a conversation about that on Monday, because I want to dig into some of the comments that I saw and the mindset behind it. And I really just think that people are basing their attitudes about Black women on media and what they see being portrayed. I'm like, you can't possibly tell me that you are in community with real Black women and you feel this way.
Well, we need to kick media to the curb.
Listen, you know how I feel about it. You already know how I feel about it. That's why I wrote an entire book series. And I will say this about church love. My series has been out since 2004. More men have read my novels than women. Of the men who have read my novels, they have now gotten happily married. They have children. They have families, and they are continuing. Some of them have been married 10 years, some of them 14 years, because my book has been out that long. And so there is, I would say, some remedies to the things that we see happening in our community. There are some very necessary things that we need to do on both sides, both genders. in order to have those strong relationships. And I cover those things in my novel, but I cover them in a very humorous way so that people get the point. The point is not lost in the humor. But just to kind of write Black women off, that's what I'm seeing a lot of in the commentary. And so my thing is, who is your community? Who is in your community? What are the voices that you're listening to? What are the women? Where are the women in your life? Because your conversation lets me know that your community, you have a community issue. Either you're not in community at all, or parts of the community you're in has so much negativity coming at you that you can't see the forest for the trees. And so I want to talk about that possibly on Monday. But Pastor Ben, I want to thank you for coming in to dialogue with me about the women that we featured tonight. Tonight we talked about Shirley Chisholm, Gwendolyn Brooks, and also Faith Ringgold. So if you're coming in late and you want to catch the rewind, you'll see us talking and reading about those three women. And now we're going to have our very illustrious author coming to join us tonight, Mrs. Deanne Matthews. So I'm going to switch out here, Pastor Ben, and bring Miss Deanne in. Thank you so much. All right. Good evening, good evening, good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
I am good. I want to go ahead and introduce our guest on tonight. Deanne Matthews is an author, musician, and artist living in San Francisco, California. She is the author of The Freedom Guide for Music Creators, a concise book explaining the basics of music business, and the creator of the course, The Ultimate Guide to Copyright Songs. She is also the creative director of Praising Pilgrim's Music, a small publishing company of music and music-related materials based in San Francisco. Ms. Matthews is deeply interested in current events as they relate to American history, and she is devoted to portraying the truth of God's redemptive and reconciling purposes through writing engaging fiction. Welcome, welcome, welcome tonight. I'm excited about listening to this book on tonight. Deanne, go ahead and tell us a little bit about how you got into writing this particular work, because I know you're already an author, and so you really do help people with the music business, the music world, copyright, publishing. But tell us about this work and how you got into writing about this subject.
Okay, so first of all, thank you to you and also to Daring Dialogues for the invitation. I really appreciate it. The Holy Spirit tells me to check my Facebook from time to time, and almost always you're up there with a blessing. Awesome. So God is honoring what you're doing because you're blessing other people, even people that aren't paying attention. Thank you. This book was not meant to be a book at all. I'm on a platform called Hive, the Hive blockchain, which is a social media that is based on a blockchain.
Okay.
And it was Steam. And so I ended up there in 2019, very early in the year, and joined the writing community there. And so I had they had writing prompts every day. So I had an old character that I never published, Ironwood Hamilton, who was a detective, little bit of Robert E. Lee and Sherlock Holmes trying to deal with 21st century Virginia and be fair, which is complicated. But if I have prompts I could deal with, I just be like, we'll just use it as a clue to solve the case. They made me the writer of the week. And so I'm like, well, let me see if I can write some extra content. So I'm writing that 17 days of extra content just as a thank you. This is the whole 17 days plus some epilogue. So it took about a month to do this. And then I realized, oh, wait, this is a whole book. And It wasn't what I intended to do. It was just that I was receiving support. Hive has a lot of people from the global South, and it's particularly the African diaspora as well. So it turned out that you have a lot of people of the European branch of the human family who were open to listening to stories about how we make things better. Mm-hmm. And also a lot of people who were coming in talking about, yeah, this is our experience and this is what we've been going through and policing and so forth. I didn't mean to predict January 6th, but if you know your Civil War history, mm-hmm. you know that you feel that that was in the air. So how did I get to that subject? Because it's just like you could feel that energy already mm-hmm. in 2019.
Yes.
Kind of conflict had to happen. I didn't know, but that was just what the Spirit gave me, that we need to tackle this issue. Charlottesville mm-hmm. in 2017 had kind of gone back of my head about that. And so it was time to just, 17 days of writing, and it just poured out. It just poured out.
Wow. So how did you come up with the title for it, Black, White, and Red All Over?
Okay, so this happened because I was a professional journalist. I was in newspapers. And remember, one of the first jokes that my grandmother ever told me was black, white, and red all over. The newspaper.
Oh.
So as I was a journalist, I had a professor, Mr. Austin Longscott, just had his 80th birthday, and he taught us about Black newspapers and Latino newspapers and all these things, because he said, he was slick how he did it because he had to keep his job, but he said, understand that your mainstream media maintains the status quo. Mm-hmm. So what's the status quo in the United States of America? He's left the question out there and then taught us about all of these other newspapers, about Chicago Defender, mm-hmm. the Accident, all these necessities. And I was his star student. So he told me a lot more. And so that's sort of where the idea came of, even in what, of course, is 2019, it's a Black newspaper, but it has an online branch. If these people in Lawton County, Virginia, which is fictional, but kind of not, are going to tell their own stories, which is why I'll start reading, they have to start their own publication. Because the mainstream press, forget it. They're not going to do it. So they're going to start their own. And that's sort of what the story began.
Wow. 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 You said so much there, and it makes sense, that in your career, you would take your career of journalism and also weave that experience and that knowledge into your writing. As far as Charlottesville 2017, I was living in Virginia during that time, doing ministry in Virginia during that time, 1 hour outside of Charlottesville. And so our ministry kind of sits right in the midst of all of that. And so we were having some of the same kinds of discourse, some of the same kinds of conversations in our community. We were pulling people in to discuss things like race and racism and white supremacy. We were holding community forums. We were participating in events as far as remembering people in the past who had dealt with lynching in that area and community. So a lot was happening in that time. And I remember being in prayer one night, and the Lord showed me sort of this graveyard of it was like a cemetery, but in this cemetery, it was like in, open vision. I saw all of these Confederate soldiers arising from their graves. And I heard the Spirit say, when I was in prayer, he said, the South is trying to rise again, and you must begin to push back against this spirit of Confederacy because it's rising again. And that really began our journey in terms of like being more active and more vocal about pushing back against white supremacy. And this was around 2015, 2016. So when Charlottesville exploded, we were like right in the thick of it, right in the midst of it. And we had been hosting programs to sort of push back and combat what was happening. So I want to hear more about this book. I want us to jump into the reading tonight. If you can kind of set up for us the synopsis of what's happening in the section that you're reading, and then tell me the page number, and we'll jump into reading the text on tonight.
Okay, the page number is page 6. I mean, we're literally starting at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Because what I wanted to do was set up the secret about this book that makes it unique from many others. Usually the way these stories are told in American history, certain people do stuff and then we have to react.
Mm-hmm.
I purposely did this because if you look at American history and you look at civilization, people of African descent are first movers. But that's not the way the story is often told. And there's some very important names in here.
Mm-hmm.
We won't meet all of them at the beginning, but scattered through here. So this new newspaper decides to announce its presence. And the rest of this book is everybody in Lofton County trying to figure out, what are we about to do? 61% of the population is rocked back on its heels to start. And the 39% of the population is Black, has decided, we're going to be the first mover in this. And you're going to figure out what you're going to do with this first section.
All right.
Number 1 is from page 6, the new newspaper. It used to be, what's that's black and white and red all over was a joke told about the newspaper. But every newspaper in the hands of racist reactionaries in the South has indeed been red all over, soaked with the blood of innocent Black people, brutalized and slaughtered over lies in print that continue to this day. No more will we allow the wholesale placarding of racist tomes about ourselves and our children to pass for news. No more will we not have a voice to raise and challenge. No more shall we, the Black populations of Tinyville, Littleburg, Minneapolis, Smallwood, Shortport, Big Loft, and the rural countryside be passively painted as savages, while the real savages sit comfortably in places of law, commerce, and politics. Be it known to all Virginia, those days are over. Hereby understand the Lofton County Free Voice will roar back at the voices of racist reactionary news, beginning in Tinyville, then across Lofton County, then to the uttermost parts of Virginia. Captain Ironwood Hamilton and Lieutenant Patrick O'Reilly of Tinyville's 2-man police force stood at the nearest public bulletin board near the police station, reading what they had been reading over and over again on their regular dawn walk through the town. All right, that's a good place to stop right there. We're going to meet some of these other characters, but this is how we're going to start. We're just going to throw it on the table and deal with it. That's how we make our beginning. And the 2 people who are reading it are police officers. Oh dear. Oh dear. Okay, so now, because we all know what was going on in 2019 and what was about to happen in 2020, and at that point we hadn't even had people convicted yet. In any major way. So it's just like, okay, you're going to get all these Southern white police officers in Virginia. And this is what they're going to wake up to in the morning. Okay.
Wow. So it's just put it on the table. It's a drop it like it's hot. It's a read all about it. I want to say it's also a free all about it.
Yeah, I just took everything that Mr. Long Scott. When I was a professional copy editor, we taught how to do something called upside down triangle. So you edit the story from. But I noticed pretty quickly that because of the way that was set up, all the humanizing details, they don't make the meat of the story, but it's just like all the things you would really need to understand, because the copy editing group I was in included the Oakland Tribune, which of course, if you know the history of Oakland, you know the history of Black people. Mm-hmm. It's very fashionable to talk about how Black folks were messing up, but all the humanizing detail that you need to know were at the bottom of the triangle, so you had to cut that triangle coming from the bottom going up. That's what we were all trained to do. A lot of necessary detail was left out. And I was the only Black person working with the Bay Area News Group at that time. So I knew the stuff was being left out, but no one else was even aware. So at that time, newspaper editors were 93% white males. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of stuff going on. And there was a lot of stuff going on then that just by virtue of knowing what I knew, because I had been trained by a professor who was willing to be open about what was happening, you knew. We have a system of telling stories that doesn't tell the stories. I'm like, okay, forget it. We're just going to throw it on a page, and we're going to have to deal with it. Because it has to be done. And this is what I'm writing.
Yeah.
It has to be done.
Wow. Wow. So tell me a little bit about these two characters, these two officers.
Okay. I'll actually do it from page 7. We'll go ahead and describe them. We'll just pick up where we left off.
All right.
The lieutenant was 25 years old, medium height and build, with bright red hair, ruddy skin, green eyes, and a shocking southern drawl, unless, of course, you know the Scotch-Irish history of the southeastern United States. The captain was 45 years old, 6 feet tall, sinewy, with iron gray eyes, and hair to match. His features looked like something that those southern artists who loved to carve Confederates out of marble would have adored. Classic strong features, handsome, calm, and resolute. The slight pinch in those features from the sudden headache the captain was experiencing would, of course, have been glossed over. "Wow," said Lieutenant O'Reilly. Have ever you read such bombast in all your life, Captain?" Captain Ironwood Hamilton shook his head slowly because of the headache that was increasing every second. "It's only bombast if the Lofton County Free Boys can't do what it says. I rather think it can, or at least make a gallant effort." Lieutenant O'Reilly's green eyes got wide. "Captain, you're not serious. A black newspaper in Lofton County? They won't last a week." Captain Hamilton shook his head again and restrained his urge to rub his throbbing temples. "It's not 1819, and these are not amateurs we're dealing with. Just from this first issue, I know they have a good chunk of money in hand, dedicated people, and good strategic and tactical sense." "How?" "Look at the quality of the paper and the ink. Excellent for something that editors of the Free Voice have to know is going to be exposed to the elements and the anger of a good portion of 72% of this town. It is a good 20-weight 11 by 17 paper with first-class laser ink on a new printer." "How do you know it's new?" "Printed items, particularly in color, have less sharply defined edges the older the printer gets. There's a bit less precision. Anyhow, one has to consider this being $4 a sheet. A little less with discounts on bulk printing, but assuming just tiny good for a moment, there are at least 100 of these if the town is saturated like we've seen on the streets we've checked. That's 400 in printing costs alone. None of that was spent here. It either had to be in Roanoke or Big Loft, where they have the kind of print shops that can do this kind of work." Ironwood Hamilton's very, very good detective, very detailed in how he organizes things. And Lieutenant O'Reilly is young and green and has picked up a lot from the men he's been raised around. But you can see that off rip, Captain Hamilton is at least trying to be fair. Off rip. Trying to be fair. Great powers, but he's attempting to use them fairly. So, okay, is he going to make it, though? Is he going to make it to the right side? We don't know. Not at the beginning. We have no way of knowing.
Wow. And so it begins. So this story really kind of, to me, it kind of puts at the forefront how can I say, the people who say they're not paying attention to Black people, but yet are scrutinizing every single thing that Black people do towards progress.
Yep.
And so
they done use a new printer, and there's nothing like that around here. So to that level.
And if you've ever lived in Virginia, you know this level of scrutiny.
Wow.
I've lived it.
The only thing, also, my pastor's grandson went to school in Charlottesville. So a lot of the kind of pressure he lived under when Pastor went out to visit, it's everything you imagine it being. So from just listening to their stories, I kind of had the idea of writing, okay, if this is what you experience, what must the people watching you be like? And that's sort of how this came down. So to hear you say, because you live there, that, okay, I'm on, is good, but kind of scary at the same time.
You are on it. I'll just give you a little snippet of one of my experiences, and then you're going to tell us how we can grab this book, because readers and listeners need to know. We're also airing on podcast on Anchor. So I will also be sharing this to our Facebook space. We're also airing on YouTube right now. So our listeners there are listening to the conversation. Um, when I was in Virginia working in one of the schools there, um, I experienced the Southern liberal hospitality of the racists, and the group of women that I was working with. Because what I've come to find out is you can't really begin to talk about white supremacy unless you understand the womb in which white supremacy comes out of. And so, some of the most racist experiences I had living in Virginia were all tied to white liberal women of the South. I
It makes
worked,
sense.
yeah, I worked with one woman. She was one of the members of the Daughters of the Confederacy.
Yikes.
And she had, upon my exiting this particular school, she had written, well, she had gotten with two other women in the building, and they wrote a 2-page letter. Had nothing to do with my work ethic, had nothing to do with my productivity. The 2-page letter was shown to me by a Black administrator who said, I know these women appear to be your friend, but here's what they had to say about you.
Wow.
And she let me read the 2-page letter. And literally, the entire letter was about my movements, like literally, like how I came in the morning, what I did, where I went in the building, even to the point of saying, we noticed that she uses this restroom that we use, and we do not want her using this restroom because we use it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yep. This is
And so,
21st century.
and so it was like, how do they know what restroom I'm using? There are like 25 restrooms in this building. How do they know the exact restroom that I'm using, the time that I was going, how long I was in the rest? Like, it was that. It was
Wow.
it was the clocking of my movements as if I were a slave.
Literally.
Yes. And so
Yeah.
that level of detail in a letter to say, we want her gone. Now, I didn't leave because of that letter. I left for other reasons, but that was like an end of the year letter, and I was coming back the next year. So it just let me know that when you're dealing with white supremacy, you cannot go by looks. It's not about how a person looks at you. It's not even about how kind a person is. It is their mentality towards your humanity. And I think a lot of people don't understand that about white supremacy, because a white supremacist can say, you can come to my school, you just can't drink out of the same fountain that I drink out of. I don't mind your presence per se. I mind the fact that you see yourself as equal to me.
Right.
That is
our existence of people is the offense to many of these people.
Yes.
That is a sad reality, but our existence as equally free people, 157 years later, is still an offense. But then again, there is a gentleman named Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III who has some children of his own running around. So some people aren't going to let this go. Well, the United States colored troops have some offspring as well. So those that want it, okay. All right. I was told to come in by the back door by a liberal white woman myself once. That's too long a story for here, because I did hear your instructions. Tell folks we didn't get the book, but that's another conversation. We have one of these young ladies, if you will, in this book, but we won't get there today. You want to know where people can actually get the book itself. Okay. So I'm going to put this in the comments, and I'm also going to spell it out So those of you who are in listening land can also get it. The website for the book is BWRAO, BWRAO Mystery, just the word mystery.com. And I'm going to put this in the comments as well, and you will be able to see the trailer and use the beautiful Amazon button there. But the beautiful thing about BWRAOmystery.com is we have our own website. If you would like a signed copy, there are a couple ways you can get it. Let Miss Charles know that this is what you want. You can drop a comment on my Instagram or her Instagram and let her know. But also we have a dedicated email line that all I have to do is just make sure to check it. And that is BWRAders@gmail.com. And if you let me know you want a signed copy, I will make sure that you get that, shipping included, for if you're in the United States, for $20 inclusive taxes and shipping. So just let me know if you want a signed copy. Otherwise, you can get the digital download. And if you really, really, really want your copy, Amazon will send it to you like that. You can pay for your shipping. But if you want a signed copy, let somebody know. Check my email address. Also, if you want to listen to me reading multiple chapters, I have a playlist and just got on Instagram, so I don't know how to copy that list to this right now. But if you look at me as Deanne Matthews on YouTube, I have a playlist where you can listen to me reading this. And I'll probably start putting out some new content since I know I'm going to have new listeners. So look for that coming up in the near future.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, Deanne, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. I encourage you to get the book Black, White, and Red all over, especially if you are into mystery fiction with some serious detail and attention to Black people, Black life, Black causes, and small towns, and how to effectively rout white supremacy. This has been another episode of Daring Dialogues. Lady Deanne, I want to thank you so much for your time and attention. To everyone, remember, light is the most daring opposition to darkness. So continue to go out and be light. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much for your time, and God bless. Bye-bye.